The cargo plane wasn't built for sharp dives, impossible rescues, or split-second heroics. Yet tonight, it screamed toward the black ocean like a fighter jet chasing its final battle. "Mayday! Mayday! I'm losing everything!" The broken voice burst through the emergency frequency, distorted by static but filled with unmistakable fear. Captain Elena Brooks gripped the controls so tightly her knuckles turned white. Thousands of feet below, somewhere inside the endless darkness of the Pacific, an advanced fighter aircraft was falling out of the sky. Its engine had gone silent. Its instruments were dying one by one, and its pilot had less than 2 minutes before freezing water became his grave. "There are no rescue aircraft close enough," her young co-pilot whispered after scanning the radar. "Nobody can reach him in time." Elena never answered. Her eyes remained fixed on the glowing instruments ahead. Years of experience told her exactly what the numbers meant. The fighter wasn't simply descending, it was running out of options. The radio crackled again. "I can't see the ocean. I don't know where the horizon is. If I eject now, they'll never find me." A chilling silence filled the cockpit. Every regulation demanded Elena stay on her assigned cargo route. Every military procedure ordered her to wait for command. Every sensible decision told her to keep flying. Instead, she shoved the throttles forward. The giant transport aircraft lurched violently as it abandoned its flight path and rolled into a steep banking turn that made warning alarms erupt across the cockpit. "What are you doing?" her co-pilot shouted, grabbing the side panel. "We'll lose our clearance. They'll ground us for this." "They can deal with me later," Elena said, her voice calm enough to cut through the panic. "Right now, someone needs us." Far above the clouds, 2 F-22 Raptors suddenly altered course. Ground controllers frowned as unfamiliar radar signatures raced toward Elena's position. Then an operator asked the question that changed everything. "Heavy 7-1, identify yourself." For just a heartbeat, Elena hesitated before pressing the transmit button. She spoke a forgotten call sign that hadn't echoed across military frequencies in years. Within seconds, the 2 F-22 pilots stopped talking altogether. They knew exactly who she was. "Before we begin, comment where you're watching from." 12 hours before that desperate Mayday call shattered the silence, Captain Elena Brooks expected nothing more exciting than another routine cargo run. The enormous C-17 Globemaster III climbed steadily through layers of gray clouds, carrying emergency medical equipment, aircraft components, and sealed military containers from Alaska toward a remote Pacific outpost. It wasn't glamorous work. There were no cheering crowds, no headlines, and certainly no medals waiting at the end of the runway. Cargo pilots were successful when absolutely nothing happened. That was exactly how Elena preferred it. She had grown comfortable becoming invisible. The cockpit was filled with the familiar sounds of steady engines, soft radio chatter, and the occasional beep from navigation systems. A half-finished cup of coffee rested beside the throttle, already cold, forgotten hours ago. Her co-pilot, Lieutenant Noah Carter, couldn't have been more different. Fresh from transport training, he still carried the excitement that came with wearing military wings. Every flight felt like an adventure to him. "You know," Noah said with a grin while studying the weather display, "people think military flying is non-stop action." Elena allowed herself a faint smile. "They've watched too many movies." "So, you never get bored?" "I've learned that boring usually means everyone gets home." Noah chuckled before returning to his checklist. Although they had flown together for months, he knew surprisingly little about the quiet woman sitting beside him. She rarely talked about herself. She never bragged about her experience. She avoided conversations about her past whenever the crew gathered after flights. The only clue that she had lived another life was a faded leather flight bag she carried everywhere. Sewn onto one corner was the outline of an old squadron patch. Time had worn away the words until they were almost impossible to read. More than once, Noah had wondered why a cargo captain carried herself with the alert posture of someone expecting danger around every corner. Even during peaceful flights, Elena's eyes constantly swept across the sky, instinctively checking mirrors, clouds, and radar, as though she still anticipated threats no one else could see. Old habits, he assumed, habits that never disappeared. Outside the windshield, the Pacific stretched endlessly beneath them, calm and empty beneath the fading sunlight. The mission looked ordinary, just another quiet night over open water. Then, without warning, the emergency frequency exploded with violent static. A trembling voice fought through the interference. Mayday. Mayday. Any aircraft reading this, please respond. The peaceful flight was over. The desperate voice on the emergency frequency sent a chill through Elena's body, but it wasn't fear. It was recognition. Without realizing it, her right hand tightened around the control yoke exactly the way it had years ago, back when every mission carried the weight of life and death. For a brief moment, the cargo plane around her seemed to disappear, replaced by memories she had spent years trying to bury. There was a time when Captain Elena Brooks wasn't known for hauling cargo across lonely oceans. She had been one of the Air Force's most respected fighter pilots, fast, fearless, precise. Her call sign, Phoenix, had become well known across multiple squadrons. Senior officers trusted her judgment, younger pilots admired her discipline, and instructors often used recordings of her flights to teach new recruits. She wasn't the loudest pilot in the room, but when things went wrong, everyone wanted Phoenix flying beside them. Then came the mission that erased everything. It had started like dozens before it. Intelligence officers identified what they believed was an enemy command center hidden inside a small mountain village. Elena and her wingman were ordered to strike immediately before the target escaped. As her fighters streaked toward the objective, she armed her weapons and locked onto the coordinates. Then something caught her eye. Tiny figures, not soldiers, families. Children ran between buildings while older villagers hurried toward shelters. Smoke from cooking fires drifted through the streets. Nothing about the scene matched the intelligence briefing. "Phoenix, you're cleared to engage," command ordered through her headset. She didn't respond. Instead, she made another low pass over the village. The picture became even clearer. There were no military vehicles, no weapons, no enemy positions, only innocent people living ordinary lives. "Phoenix, confirm weapons release." Her heartbeat pounded inside her helmet. Every second she hesitated was considered disobedience. Finally, she pulled the stick hard. Her fighter climbed sharply away from the target. "I'm aborting," she transmitted. "The intelligence is wrong. I have civilians on the ground." The radio exploded with angry voices. Orders became threats. Threats became accusations. But Elena never turned back. 48 hours later, satellite surveillance confirmed what she had seen. The intended target had been identified incorrectly. The real enemy base was nearly 20 miles away. She had saved hundreds of innocent lives. Yet instead of receiving a commendation, she received reassignment papers. The official report praised her instincts, but condemned her refusal to obey a direct combat order. Within weeks, Phoenix disappeared. Her medals were packed into a forgotten box, her fighter wings gathered dust, and the woman who had once ruled the skies quietly became just another cargo pilot that nobody looked at twice. Now, as the frightened Mayday echoed once more through the cockpit, Elena felt something inside her awaken. The sky hadn't called her by name in years. Tonight, it finally had. The cockpit fell silent except for the constant hum of the engines and the harsh bursts of static coming from the emergency frequency. Then the voice returned, broken, breathing hard, barely holding together. "Mayday, this is Falcon 3-1. Complete engine failure. Losing hydraulic pressure. Altitude 7,000 feet and dropping. If anyone can hear me, I need help." Lieutenant Noah Carter stared at the navigation screen as fresh data streamed in. "Captain," he said, his voice suddenly tight. "I've got him." Elena leaned closer. A blinking symbol flashed on the tactical display, descending alarmingly fast over one of the most isolated stretches of the North Pacific. No nearby airfields, no rescue helicopters, no naval ships within immediate range. Nothing. "He'll be in the water before anyone gets there," Noah whispered. Elena didn't need the computer to tell her that. She had seen this exact nightmare from the cockpit of a fighter years ago. Once an aircraft lost both power and altitude over freezing open water at night, time became the deadliest enemy. Every passing second erased another chance of survival. The radio crackled again. "My instruments are blacking out. I can't restart the engine. I can't even tell where the horizon is anymore." His breathing grew faster. "I don't want to disappear out here." The words hit Elena harder than she expected. She imagined the pilot alone inside a powerless aircraft, surrounded by endless darkness, knowing that every warning light flashing before him might be the last thing he would ever see. Noah quickly contacted regional flight control. The answer came back almost immediately. "Heavy 7-1, remain on your assigned route. Rescue assets have been notified. Continue to destination." Elena stared through the windshield. Somewhere beyond that endless wall of darkness, another aviator was running out of sky. "Estimated rescue arrival?" she asked. Noah checked the transmission. 38 minutes. Elena slowly shook her head. He doesn't have 38 minutes. She reached for the controls. Noah's eyes widened. "Captain, don't." Ignoring the warning, Elena disconnected the autopilot. The aircraft shuddered as manual control returned. Warning tones echoed across the cockpit. "What are you doing?" Noah asked. "We're changing course. We don't have authorization. I know. If we leave our route, command could suspend both of us." Elena's expression never changed. "If we stay on this route," she said quietly, "a pilot dies, believing nobody came." For several long seconds, Noah simply stared at her. Then he took a deep breath and silently began entering a new heading into the flight computer. The giant cargo aircraft rolled sharply toward the dark horizon. Ahead of them, hidden somewhere beneath the night sky, a dying fighter was making its final descent. The cockpit erupted with warning alarms as the massive cargo aircraft sliced away from its assigned route. Outside, the moon had vanished behind thick storm clouds, leaving nothing but endless darkness. The ocean below looked like a black abyss, impossible to separate from the sky above. Captain Elena Brooks pushed the throttles farther forward. "Come on," she whispered to the aircraft. "Just a little more." Lieutenant Noah Carter stared at the radar, his pulse racing. "Falcon 3-1 is down to 4,000 feet. Another transmission burst through the speakers, weaker than before. "Heavy 7-1. I've completely lost my attitude indicator. My cockpit's going dark. I can't tell if I'm level or upside down." Elena immediately grabbed the radio. "Falcon 3-1, stay with me. Ignore every failed instrument except your airspeed. Listen only to my voice." A long pause followed. Then came a shaky reply. "I'm trying, but I can't see anything." The giant transport finally broke through the cloud layer. What Elena saw stole the air from her lungs. Far ahead, barely visible between sheets of rain, a single blinking emergency beacon drifted lower every second. The fighter wasn't flying anymore. It was gliding toward the ocean. Noah looked at the distance counter. "Captain, we're still too high. I know. If we descend this fast, we'll exceed safe limits. I know. The aircraft wasn't designed for this. I know, Noah." Without another word, Elena shoved the control column forward. The nose of the C-17 dropped sharply. The heavy aircraft began an aggressive descent that sent unsecured equipment rattling throughout the cargo bay. Overspeed warnings screamed across the cockpit. The airframe trembled violently as powerful winds slammed against its wings. Noah grabbed the dashboard. "We're approaching structural limits. We're running out of time." At 2,000 feet, Elena reached for another switch. Landing lights. One after another, brilliant white beams exploded through the darkness, piercing rain and mist like giant searchlights. For the first time, the invisible ocean appeared beneath them. Towering waves rolled endlessly across the black water, their white crests glowing inside the flood of light. Elena keyed the microphone. "Falcon 3-1. Do you see us?" Only static answered. For one terrifying second, she feared the radio had gone silent forever. Then, a faint voice broke through. "I see the lights." Relief flashed across Noah's face, but Elena wasn't smiling. "Stay behind me," she ordered calmly. "Match my descent exactly. Don't chase the water. Chase my lights." The powerless fighter emerged from the darkness like a ghost, sliding silently toward the illuminated path. Then a loud metallic bang echoed through the cargo plane. The entire aircraft lurched violently. Noah's eyes shot to the warning panel. Captain! A flashing alert lit up in bright red. Landing gear malfunction. And below them, the fighter was only seconds from impact. The cockpit shook so violently that Noah instinctively braced himself against the instrument panel. A bright red warning flashed across every display. Landing gear malfunction. "We've damaged the gear," Noah shouted. "Captain, if we keep descending, we could lose control." Elena spared the warning panel only the briefest glance. "Forget the gear." "What? If we don't save that pilot, none of this will matter." Ahead of them, the powerless fighter emerged from the darkness, little more than a black silhouette against the storm. Its navigation lights flickered weakly before disappearing altogether. The aircraft was no longer flying. It was simply surrendering to gravity. The radio crackled. "My controls are getting heavier. I don't know how much longer I can hold her." Elena took a slow breath, forcing every ounce of panic out of her voice. "Listen to me carefully, Falcon 3-1. You're not alone anymore." There was silence, then a quiet reply. "I'm listening. I've lit the ocean for you. Don't look anywhere else. Ignore your instincts, ignore the darkness. Stay behind my lights." She gently lowered the massive cargo plane another few hundred feet, using the glowing landing lights to carve a bright corridor across the restless sea. Rain shimmered inside the beams, while waves crashed beneath them like moving mountains. Noah watched in disbelief. "You're creating a runway!" Elena nodded. "Exactly." The fighter slowly aligned behind the illuminated path. Its nose rocked from side to side as the pilot fought fading hydraulics, but little by little, the aircraft stabilized. "Easy," Elena whispered, almost as if the pilot could hear her breathing. "Small corrections. Don't fight the airplane. Let it glide." The fighter descended. 500 feet. 300. 100. Now, gently raise the nose. For one endless heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the jet touched the ocean. A wall of water exploded into the air as the aircraft skipped across the waves, slammed down again, and finally slid to a violent stop. Steam and spray swallowed it whole. Noah held his breath. Did he? Suddenly, an orange emergency flare burst into the night sky. "He made it!" Noah yelled. "He's alive!" Without hesitation, Elena ordered the emergency survival raft released. It splashed into the ocean only yards from the stranded pilot, drifting directly toward him with the current. Relief washed through the cockpit, but it lasted only seconds. Their radar suddenly erupted with two blinding contacts approaching at incredible speed. Noah's smile vanished. "They're coming in fast." Before Elena could answer, a cold, authoritative voice cut across the radio. "Unknown military aircraft. You have entered restricted operational airspace. Turn immediately and identify yourself." The real test was only beginning. The radar warning blared through the cockpit. Two unidentified aircraft were closing the distance at nearly twice the speed of sound. Within seconds, twin shadows burst through the cloud cover, slicing across the night sky with breathtaking precision. Their angular silhouettes reflected flashes of lightning before settling into formation on either side of the cargo plane. They weren't ordinary fighters, they were F-22 Raptors. Noah swallowed hard. "Captain, they're locking onto us." The radio came alive with a calm but commanding voice. "Heavy 7-1, maintain your current heading. State your identity and explain why you abandoned your assigned route." Elena reached for the microphone. "This is Heavy 7-1. We diverted to assist a disabled aircraft that declared Mayday. The pilot is alive. Emergency raft deployed, awaiting rescue." Silence. The lead fighter seemed to drift closer, almost studying the scarred cargo plane that had no business flying so low over the ocean. Another voice broke in, older, more experienced. "Heavy 7-1. Repeat your pilot identification." Noah glanced at Elena. "They're asking for you." For a long moment, she said nothing. Her thumb rested on the transmit switch, but memories flooded back before any words came out. The call sign, the one she had locked away along with her medals, her flight suit, and the career she believed had ended forever. She hadn't spoken it in years. Quietly, almost like a confession, she pressed the button. Former tactical call sign. Phoenix. The radio instantly fell silent. No static. No instructions. Nothing. Even the two Raptors seemed to freeze in perfect formation. Noah frowned. What just happened? Before Elena could answer, the lead pilot returned. His voice was no longer cold. It carried unmistakable disbelief. "Phoenix? Captain Elena Brooks?" She closed her eyes for the briefest moment. "Yes." Another long pause followed, then laughter, half shock, half relief. "I don't believe this." The second Raptor pilot cut in. "We spent years hearing stories about you in training. They said the pilot called Phoenix disappeared after refusing an unlawful strike. They also said she'd never hesitate to save a life." Noah stared at Elena, speechless. The quiet cargo captain beside him, the woman who rarely spoke about herself, had become a legend without him ever knowing. The lead pilot continued. "You haven't changed, Captain." Elena looked down at the dark ocean where the stranded fighter pilot clung to the emergency raft beneath the flashing rescue beacon. "I changed more than you think," she answered softly. "No," the Raptor pilot replied. "You just finally had a reason to become yourself again." At that exact moment, distant rescue helicopters appeared on the horizon, their searchlights sweeping across the waves. The mission wasn't over. But for the first time that night, Elena allowed herself to believe everyone might actually make it home. The distant thumping of helicopter rotors grew louder with every passing second. Twin search and rescue helicopters burst through the storm clouds, their powerful spotlights sweeping across the restless ocean until they locked onto the flashing emergency beacon beside the crippled fighter. "There!" Noah shouted, pointing through the windshield. "They've got him!" The rescue crews wasted no time. A rescue swimmer descended into the churning water while the helicopters fought violent gusts to hold position above the waves. From the cockpit of the cargo plane, Elena watched the stranded pilot struggle to his feet inside the life raft. Exhausted and soaked by freezing seawater, he still managed to lift one arm toward the aircraft that had guided him to safety. It wasn't a salute. It was something even more meaningful. A silent thank you. Only after the rescue hoist began lifting him toward the helicopter did Elena finally release the breath she had been holding for what felt like hours. Noah leaned back in his seat, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like that." Before Elena could answer, the lead F-22 pilot called again. "Heavy 7-1. Rescue confirms the pilot is alive. Because of your actions, he never had to enter the freezing water." The words settled over the cockpit like a quiet victory. No medals, no applause, just the simple knowledge that a life had been saved. Then something unexpected happened. The two Raptors pulled away before climbing high above the cargo plane. For a brief moment, Noah thought they were leaving. Instead, both fighters rolled gracefully onto either side of the C-17, matching its speed with breathtaking precision. Their navigation lights glowed through the darkness as they formed a perfect ceremonial escort. Noah looked out his window in amazement. "They're honoring us." "No," Elena replied softly, her eyes fixed ahead. "They're honoring the mission." The lead pilot's voice returned one final time. "Phoenix, Command can debate regulations all they want. But every pilot in these skies knows the truth." He paused. "Tonight, Courage flew a cargo plane." Elena felt something tighten in her chest. For years, she had carried the weight of one decision, wondering whether doing the right thing had cost her the life she loved. Now, watching the fighters escort her through the storm, she realized something she had never allowed herself to believe. They hadn't forgotten her. They had been waiting for the day the woman behind the call sign would remind the world who she truly was. As dawn's first light stretched across the horizon, the storm finally began to break. But Elena knew the hardest part of the journey still lay ahead. Soon, she would have to face the people who had grounded her career and explain why she had disobeyed orders once again. The first rays of dawn spilled across the horizon as Heavy 7-1 descended through layers of pale gray clouds. The storm that had ruled the night was gone, leaving behind a calm sky that seemed almost impossible after everything they had endured. Inside the cockpit, neither Elena nor Noah spoke. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by the quiet exhaustion that follows impossible decisions. Every warning light had been cleared except one. The damaged landing gear reminder still glowed on the instrument panel, a silent witness to the risks they had taken. Noah finally broke the silence. "Do you think they'll court-martial us?" Elena stared straight ahead at the runway coming into view. "They might." "You don't sound worried," she smiled faintly. "I've already lived through losing the career I loved. There's not much left they can take." Moments later, the massive cargo plane touched down with surprising grace. The damaged landing gear held just long enough, and the aircraft rolled safely to a stop. As the engines powered down, Noah looked through the cockpit window and froze. "Captain!" The ramp was crowded. Military police vehicles, senior officers, maintenance crews, even several fighter pilots stood waiting near the taxiway. "They're all here." Elena quietly unfastened her harness. "They're not here for the airplane." As she stepped onto the cold concrete, every conversation on the flight line seemed to stop. Dozens of eyes followed her as she walked toward the group of waiting officers. Leading them was a gray-haired Air Force colonel whose face revealed nothing. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Then the colonel extended his hand. "Captain Brooks." Elena hesitated before shaking it. "I assume you've reviewed my unauthorized deviation from the flight plan, sir." The colonel nodded. "I have." Another heavy silence followed. Then, to Elena's surprise, he smiled. "I've also reviewed the rescue footage." He turned and pointed toward the nearby hangar, where a live satellite recording was frozen on a giant display. The image showed a cargo aircraft illuminating the Black Ocean, while a powerless fighter followed its path toward survival. "That recording has already reached every rescue coordination center in the Pacific." Noah looked stunned. The colonel continued. "The pilot you saved regained consciousness less than an hour ago." He reached into his jacket and unfolded a handwritten note. "He insisted this be delivered before anyone questioned your decisions." Elena unfolded the damp piece of paper. Only one sentence was written across it. "You didn't just save my life. You reminded me what kind of pilot I hope to become." For the first time in years, Elena felt the weight she'd carried begin to lift. Not because someone had praised her, but because, at last, someone truly understood why she had chosen compassion over fear. 3 days later, the rescue that had almost disappeared into classified military reports had become impossible to ignore. Word spread quietly through aviation circles. Air traffic controllers talked about the cargo captain who flew a transport aircraft like it was born for combat. Rescue crews shared the recording of brilliant landing lights cutting a glowing path across a pitch-black ocean. Fighter squadrons whispered the same forgotten call sign that had suddenly returned after years of silence: Phoenix. But Elena Brooks wasn't interested in becoming famous. She was back where she felt most comfortable, walking across the flight line before sunrise with a worn flight bag over one shoulder and a cup of coffee in her hand. Mechanics waved as she passed. Young pilots nodded with a newfound respect. She returned every greeting with the same quiet smile, never mentioning the night that had changed everything. As she reached her aircraft, Noah caught up with her. "I heard something this morning," he said. Elena looked at him curiously. "What did you hear?" "They're offering you a chance to return to the fighter program." For a moment, the morning air grew perfectly still. Years earlier, that single sentence would have meant everything to her. She looked across the runway where sleek fighter jets stood bathed in the golden light of dawn. Once, she had believed that cockpit was the only place she truly belonged. Then she turned toward her cargo aircraft. The giant transport wasn't fast, it wasn't glamorous, it would never steal the spotlight. Yet on the darkest night of someone's life, it had become exactly the aircraft the sky needed. Elena smiled. "I've already got the job I was meant to have." Noah looked surprised. "You'd really turn it down?" She nodded. Being a pilot was never about chasing the fastest airplane, it was about making sure people made it home. Just then, a black SUV pulled onto the ramp. The rescued fighter pilot, his arms still in a sling, slowly stepped out. Walking carefully, he approached Elena and stopped a few feet away. Without saying a word, he removed the embroidered Falcon 3-1 patch from his flight jacket and held it out. "I can't repay what you did," he said quietly, "but I'd be honored if you kept this." Elena accepted it with both hands. Instead of pinning it to her uniform, she slipped it into the same worn flight bag that still carried the faded Phoenix patch. 2 symbols, 2 different chapters, 1 unbreakable purpose. As the engines of her cargo plane rumbled to life once again, Elena climbed into the cockpit with quiet confidence. She no longer wondered whether the world remembered her name. It didn't matter, because true heroes aren't defined by the aircraft they fly, the rank on their shoulders, or the medals they wear. They're defined by the choices they make when someone else's life depends on them. And sometimes the brightest light in the darkest sky doesn't come from the fastest fighter. It comes from the pilot who refuses to leave anyone behind. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes courage is measured by actions, not titles. Until next time, fly safe And never underestimate the quiet heroes above the clouds.